Hello and welcome to 168 Hours. We continue our collaboration with Global Campus of Human Rights, and today we will interview Claudia Bonamini, expert on migration issues. Hello Claudia, and thank you so much for making the time.
Hello, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
My first question is about your experience. What
Yes.
kind of experience you have on especially migrants' rights and how you are connected with Global Campus of Human Rights?
I'm connected with Global Campus because I'm an alumna myself. I did the European Master in Human Rights and Democratization almost 20 years ago. So I'm from the year 2006, 2007. And so, yeah, after that, I continued working in the human rights field. In fact, the master and the Global Campus were a great start, let's say, to join the global world of human rights defenders in a way. And I've always been specializing on asylum and migration. Even before the master, I had written my thesis in the university on asylum and migration in the European Union. So I kind of continued on that path until very recently, a recently changed job. But so I have over, let's say, over 15 years of experience working mostly on advocacy, on asylum and migration, partially at the national level in Belgium. And then for the last 7.5 years, I was working for an NGO called JRS, the Jesuit Refugee Service, that works, it's an international NGO that works on asylum and migration. And I was in the European Regional Office, so I did advocacy towards the European Union institutions mainly.
What kind of improvement you have seen concerning to migration, concerning to asylum seekers and refugee rights?
I'm very sorry to say that I haven't seen much improvements. In fact, on the contrary, I've seen over the last 20 years, I've seen a situation worsening. I would say there was some improvements until 2013-14. For instance, on issues such as detention. I remember clearly in the time we were working actively to ban child detention, for example, a reality that is still occurring in Europe, in the European Union. Children are detained across Europe for migration reasons. So at that time, there was momentum to reach a ban on child detention, but then in around 2013, 2014, the European Union faced a quite sharp increase, it's true, in arrivals. From the civil society, we never wanted to call it a crisis because it was not. In fact, yes, the numbers raised, there was a rise, but it could have been managed properly if there had been a political will. There was not. There was a reaction of panic, and I would say since then, so in the last 10, 11 years, we've seen a hardening in everything that is about migration. It became a highly politicized topic, fueled by also the rise of right-wing, far right-wing forces, very often not based on facts, based on emotions, based on fears that have been fueled in the population. So as a result, the policies and the legislation has been far more and more restrictive in the last 10 years. So I'm afraid I cannot really speak about improvements. Even in the country where I'm based, when I arrived 20 years ago, there was a solid system for reception of asylum seekers. That's been dismantled, and the country has been in a permanent situation of a reception crisis since then. But it's honestly really man-made. So it's because the policies that are adopted are not addressing properly the issue, and they are trying to deter people from coming. This is not happening, and therefore, yes, then the people are on the streets. So yeah, not much improvement, I'm afraid. I need to start on a negative note.
What's the reason behind all of this? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think migration is a phenomenon that is as old as humankind. So people have always been migrating, and we wouldn't be who we are today if there was no migration. But it's true that migration brings challenges. Living together is challenging when you bring together people that have different habits, maybe different religions, different languages. It requires an effort. So this is true. This is a fact. And of course, in today's world, we are more mobile. So when migration in centuries ago was a process that was slow, people needed really time to move. Yeah, now of course everything goes much faster, and it can happen that the numbers rise. Also, we need to look around in the world. There are more and more conflicts in this world, so there are more and more people that are forced to flee, and this is a sad reality. So yeah, with this combination of more people that are forced to leave their places and the fact of being more mobile makes it that it's indeed maybe more visible. Migration is maybe more visible in our society, and then people get a bit scared. And that combined with a political response that is not one of saying, "Okay, guy, let's make it work. Let's live together. Let's find solutions." No, it's the opposite. It's really a closure of saying of also somehow it's a crisis of bit of values as well. We don't want to share our welfare. We're afraid to lose it, and the fear of losing it is legitimate somehow. But the response to that is really saddening in my view. So it's really like, no, we just keep it for our own, and everyone else has to go back to their places. But I mean, long ago we had decided that people fleeing persecution and fleeing war, we were supposed to help them and we were supposed to welcome them, and we're not doing that. So yeah, I think the answer to your question, why is that happening, is because of a fear that is somehow understandable and humane and human as well, but the response of those in charge is to fuel that fear instead of appeasing that fear and making investment that will make us live together. I'm using deliberately the word investment because this does require an investment. It requires an effort from all of us. Integration and cohabitation is not something that happens one way. It has to happen two ways. We simply are not investing in that. We're investing in other things.
So what's the role of civil society and also media in this situation? What kind of narratives they should spread?
Well, civil society, I think, it's doing what it can really to spread a narrative of encounter, a narrative that speaks about that humanize people. I mean, it's a bit strange to say humanize people. People are human. It should be obvious, but the narrative that we hear these days is talking a lot about numbers, about security, about potential threats. Well, no, we're talking about people, we're talking about families. So the narrative that civil society is trying to bring there is these people could be you. We're talking about people. I think in the case of media, it's a bit more tricky because media seek news, and I have to say, unfortunately, it's a fact that good news doesn't sell very much. People are much more attracted by sensation and bad and negative news or sensational news. And I think some part of the media are tempted and indulging in spreading that kind of news. So about criminalization, about threats, about security. While, I mean, in my experience working also at JRS, I've seen also so many good positive stories of people that were succeeding living together. And those are not enough. Those news don't come enough in the media. So I think if there is something the media could do is maybe focus more on that kind of narrative.
So what legal or policy changes you require? I mean, which will change the situation?
Well, I mean, the last round of legislative changes that ended with the so-called European Pact on Asylum and Migration last year affected the legislation quite negatively. So to get it to a positive vibe, it would take quite a few changes now. I would say if I had to focus on priorities, definitely there is a big issue on access to protection. And that means, on the one hand, access to the territory of the European Union in this case. It's these days almost impossible to access the European Union legally for people in danger, for people fleeing war or persecution. There is no such a thing as a visa to access to ask for asylum. So basically, everyone, including people fleeing war and fleeing persecutions, are forced to travel irregularly. And then when you travel irregularly, you risk to be detained. You in fact start your whole procedure from a negative note. And I mean, I'm not going to go into the technical details, but this is really problem number one: ensure that people have more legal pathways to arrive into the European Union. And I would say the second point, it's to really end the use of the practice of detention and invest in solid reception systems. These days in the European Union, and the pact will enhance this trend, detention is increasingly used as at arrival, upon arrival. And it is a way to deter people from, it's presented as a way also to deter people, to reduce, to control. It's not working. It's also self-fulfilling prophecy. If you threat people with detention, people will try to abscond. Because if I was threatened with detention, I've done nothing wrong, I will also try to find ways to escape this. So then you again get into this vicious circle. And then invest in reception, because even people who maybe ultimately might not receive a legal status, because I also acknowledge not all the people arriving in Europe are refugees. Not all people are fleeing wars. There are people that are fleeing from other reasons that are equally, in my eyes, equally problematic, such as extreme poverty, but they are not covered right now by protection status. So there will be people that will finally have a negative decision. But if you have worked with them from the start in a welcoming way, you might find other solutions, including maybe finding a solution of returning voluntarily to their countries, but with a kind of other experience and strengthened, rather than being completely broken and for the rest of their lives. So I think these for me are the really two most important things. And of course, they don't require just one little change of a law. They require a change of mindset and vision.
So what advocacy or strategy tools are available for human rights defenders in this regard?
You have several things. You have, of course, the direct advocacy, which in my eyes and my experience is a little bit failing, because it's so often using only the legal arguments, and the legal arguments they reach their limits in a context where the ideology is prevailing. But let's say civil society has been always trying to present the facts, do research, and show what kind of solutions would really work for the benefit of the whole society, the migrants and the society. So I think that's part one for sure. Continue researching, continue bringing the rational arguments, continue bringing the facts, debunk the myths, continue to appeal to the policymakers, also to their values, to our common humanity. And then you have, I think, an important role the civil society can play in mobilization. I think it's not a secret that civil society worldwide is under attack, and the fact of coming to the streets, protesting, showing dissent is not welcome these days, almost nowhere, including in the European Union. But this is a very important role, and we cannot stop. The civil society cannot stop doing that. It's very important to continue mobilize and continue also bring, like we were saying before, another narrative. And I think that's not exactly advocacy, but it's a very important role the civil society plays and should continue playing, is bring people together. Because when people meet, they also see that they share a lot, and then those kind of fears are often disappearing. So I think this is the three important roles that civil society can play. Although, of course, it's not a secret. You need funding for that. Civil society works a lot on volunteers, works a lot on people with goodwill. But if you want to do really substantial work, you need funding, and those funding are being cut everywhere. So it's not an easy moment we're living.
In your opinion, what are the biggest protection gaps when it comes to asylum seekers in Europe?
I think I said it a little bit before. Really, the lack of access, the lack of safe and legal access for people is problem number one, because if you don't even reach the territory, there's no way you will be protected anywhere. And then the reception aspect, because if you don't have a place to stay where you're safe, you're not in a welcoming environment, you will not have the possibility to go through your procedure the way you should, to prepare for those are highly technical procedures. You need to be prepared. You need to have a lawyer. So all of these guarantees are very often not there. Not everybody sees a lawyer. Not everybody, when even they see a lawyer, not everybody sees a good lawyer or a lawyer that is actually specialized on the subject. So all these kind of guarantees really need to be there. And all of that, for me, it's really included in a reception system that makes sure people are welcomed and treated in a decent way and accompanied through the process in a dignified way.
Are these issues kind of equal in all European Union's member states? Or
No.
There are some countries where the situation is better or even worse?
No, the answer is very easy. It's no, not at all. And it's just looking at the still wide discrepancies in recognition of similar profiles across Europe will give you this answer. But also reception is very different in many countries. I mean, again, I'm sorry, I'm a bit maybe negative, but it's difficult today to find the good examples. In the past, there were some countries that we looked upon as the good students. So we had the Scandinavian countries that usually were leading, and Northwest European countries were usually leading in terms of policies and welcoming attitude. This has long gone as well. So I would say we are a little bit in a race to the bottom situation. There are also the worst students. There's always been there. I mean, unfortunately, Greece being one of those, Italy also being one of those. It's also not, I mean, I don't want to justify their flaws, but their geographical position obviously plays a role in the fact that they receive maybe more people upon arrival, and so also in more dire situation when they disembark from very difficult journeys, and that's different in the north of Europe. But it's really the environment has changed. So when we talk about reception these days, I think it's really difficult to find a country in the European Union when you say there it's really going well. Unfortunately, it's being the rights of refugees and asylum seekers are being eroded a bit everywhere.
So stereotypes also are working in this regard.
I think in other countries, and I think that's maybe also why traditionally Western, Northern European countries were doing a bit better, is also because of their past, well, their past, it said, the colonial past, but it made that the societies had been more diverse for quite some time. And so, I mean, when your neighbor has a different color of skin or has a different religion and you see it's a normal person, it becomes a bit more difficult to spread that narrative. But it's true that this is becoming more and more of a problem also. I mean, Islamophobia is a big issue, is on the rise. The link between indeed security, terrorism, and migration is made constantly. Also, the link between criminality and migration is made constantly, while I mean, there is not really evidence of that. It's true that in some countries, in prisons, there is a higher presence of people of foreign origin. But I mean, I think if we dig a little bit deeper, there are enough sociological reasons explaining that, not justifying, but explaining that. And so it's on those factors we should work, not on trying to stop a phenomenon, migration, that, as I said before, it's as old as human history. So that's not the solution. And I think really Europe should abandon this fixation of stopping that and should embrace it and manage it. This is the language the European Union uses, manage it, but manage it in a good way, manage it in a way that is beneficial for both migrants and society. We need migration also for many things. Europe is an aging continent, so only for that, also for our pensions, we need it. I don't like to use that much this kind of utilitaristic argument, because it's against, I mean, for me, it's all about human being and human rights, but it's also an argument, of course. So it's a bit blind to just say, no, we stop it and we don't want to see it. So, yeah.
But you know, I had some kind of conversation with policymakers in EU, and they were usually saying, like, people are okay with migrants if they are coming to our countries and working. If they don't want to do anything and they want to sit and earn money from the government, this is the case when people start to complain about the situation.
Yeah, but I don't know which migrants they found that don't want to work. So this is a big problem when I speak with policymakers at the European level. I'm not sure if they've ever met actually migrants they are speaking about. Because in my 15, 20 years of work on migration, I've never met someone that clearly tells me I came here to profit from the social system. I only met people who told me I want to work, I want to I want to build a better life for my children, I want protection, and a lot of motivation. Of course, if you traumatize people along the way, so people are fleeing from war, they have to cross deserts, they have to go through horrible conditions of detention. Then they arrive in Europe, they think they're safe. No, they still go, they're detained. They have to wait for years in a reception center in the best case, in other cases on the street. Yeah, then at the end of the day, you also are demolishing people that were perfectly working able when they started off their journey, but then they arrive in that condition. So, and then you treat people that way. You keep telling them you think they're lying on their reasons to come. They are cheating the system. They might be criminal, and then all of a sudden you expect them to integrate and function perfectly in your society and respect your institutions, the same institutions that until the day before were treating them as criminal. So I mean, I think it's a little bit, we are creating the problem. There is so many also, many migrants coming are very young. Many of them are even minors, unaccompanied minors. I mean, you take these very young kids, you treat them the way we treat them, and then you're surprised if they radicalize eventually and they maybe get under the influence of some radical terror organization that puts a lot of ideals in their head, but treat them as heroes. And then we're surprised, then they turn against our society. I think it's, I mean, of course, that's again, they find those that are not functioning, but they don't go and look on how many there are that are functioning and they're building our society, they build our society. So I think that kind of argument is true. People, of course, want good neighbors, but the assumption that that migrants are not that kind of good neighbors we want is wrong. Is simply wrong.
And to sum up, like what all of us should do in this situation?
I think we should all try to go a little bit beyond our fears, to try to keep an open mind, to try to go to the encounter, to try to see human beings, and trying to also make this exercise of not believing everything we're told when it comes to this, and maybe try to experience it our way. I don't want to blame people. I mean, I've been working in the sector. I've been exposed to also the good side of migration for so long. I'm a migrant myself. I mean, I'm Italian and I'm living in Belgium for 20 years. So I also know how beautiful migration is and what kind of an enrichment it can be. I'm not blaming people that are not so exposed and keep being exposed to another narrative. I understand their fears, but I think my encouragement would be, yes, try to be open, try to go beyond that, and try to see people for what they are. People.
Thank you so much for an insightful interview.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching this interview. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel.